Hello, hello. Okay, I was just live, but I couldn't see anybody's comments, so I went at it a different way. Hopefully, we can chat because that's the whole point. If you're new here, hi, my name is Trisha. I'm the owner of Creative Costume Academy. I'm your pattern nerd friend. I love talking all things pattern making, sewing, and fitting. That's what we do here on this channel. And today, or every Thursday rather, in the Creative Costume Academy world, we call it Tricky Thursday. I share a tip or trick that I have learned over my 20 plus years working in costuming, making costumes for big productions, big live productions. And yeah, that's like where all of my knowledge comes from. But now I really focus on helping you understand fitting and pattern making so that you feel empowered and really love making clothes that are uniquely you and feel and fit amazing. So, usually once a month, I'll go live on here with my good friend and pattern nerd, Charlotta of Charlotta Pattern Cutting School. And she and I talk about different subjects. It's wonderful if you enjoy learning about different points of view on different pattern cutting techniques, pattern making techniques, learning different fitting techniques, how to look at the right fabrics, what books we love, that we find for good reference. It's always, always, always a fun time. And that will actually be happening next week over on Charlotta's channel. We'll be talking about sleeves because, oh my gosh, we could talk all day, probably all week about sleeves. So that's coming up next week. But I really wanted to come on here and talk about something that I am working on. And whenever I mention it, people get really excited. But I have kind of my idea of what I think I want it to be, but I thought that we would start doing a weekly or maybe a bi-monthly, like 2 times a month conversation about it where I get to hear from you and get feedback from you. So as I am dreaming this big dream and having this come together, that I am listening to what you want. So it's kind of like we're all creating this together. And that is PatternCon. It's a convention dedicated to not only learning everything there is to learn about patterns and making patterns of all different shapes, sizes, and from different avenues. Hi, Jules. Yay. I can see you're here and people are able to talk with me. I don't know what happened. I'm going through a different way. When I tried to do it on YouTube, I couldn't see if anybody was there. So, Jules knows about about PatternCon. And if you are watching this and you enjoy this kind of thing, please hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed, please hit the subscribe. It really does help my channel. It helps tell YouTube what kinds of things that you're interested in. So it makes it easier for me to show up and produce content that, again, is going to be helpful for you in your journey, because that's what it's all about. Hi, Laura. Yeah, you couldn't find the chat either. It's so weird. I don't know how it works, but we got to figure it out. Technology, you just have to roll with it sometimes. It's like story of my life these days. Anyway, so my dream, I'll tell you my dream about PatternCon, and I would love to hear from you, the few people that are here, and as people show up, or even if you're watching this later, feel free to comment down in the chat, because it's really important to me that I hear from you. I hear what you would want, what you would benefit from. So the reason that I want to start PatternCon is because there really isn't anything out there like that. I am a self-proclaimed pattern nerd. I absolutely love pattern making for sewing. It has shaped my whole life, to be honest. It has enabled me to be able to be successful in the career that I have chosen, because I have the confidence that I can not only fit any garment to any person, but I can also make any garment that you can come up with, because that's what pattern making is. It's being able to create a 3D shape out of 2D materials like fabric, and understanding how to take something that's flat and turn it into the 3D shape that you want. And it doesn't only come into play with clothing or costuming. It's used in all different facets of ways. But because I understand it so well, and I am still always learning new things, and I love to challenge myself, and that's what costuming kind of does for me, is like it pushes you to think outside the box, which I think has helped me to grow. But I love now being able to help others understand it, because I think that the way it's been taught traditionally, it makes it really hard. And people are afraid of it, and they give up before they even realize like how freaking awesome, cool, and powerful it is. So I just feel like it's my job to spread the love and excitement about pattern making. And those of you guys who've been around me for a little while, you know, you know that I am a lover of all things pattern making, fitting, and we like to have fun. You know, we like to have fun around here. So I've been to a couple sewing conventions. I've taught at a couple sewing conventions. I'm teaching at one coming up, actually, International Quilt Fest in Houston. I'm very excited about that. And a lot of the classes and the content are centered around quilting or simple sewing techniques, and not really a lot of garment sewing, and definitely not a lot of pattern making. And there's been a couple of teachers that I have really just enjoyed learning from their different techniques, and it's helped me grow as a pattern maker, like Shingo Sato, negative, what is it, subtraction cutting. He's really great. Shingo Sato is TR Cutting School, the Pattern Magic books. You know, those books and those teachings are for people who get the basics of pattern making and like want to push the envelope and really have fun with it. And so for me, I would love to go to a place where we get to learn all these like cool new ways of making patterns and making shapes, and then I could apply that to different things that I would maybe want to make one day. Like, I think that would be really cool. And then thinking about all the different genres, if you will, of pattern making. I mean, there's, you know, home sewing simplicity patterns that you can buy, commercial patterns, and making those work for what you want. And then also, you know, that hand in hand pattern making helps with fitting and understanding how to fit clothing, which I know is a huge struggle for people. So we would definitely focus on that as well. There's vintage patterns, there's drafting patterns from, say, drafting books and tailoring books like that. There's, you know, historical pattern making, there's cosplay, there's fashion pattern making, there's movie pattern making, there's theater. I mean, there's all different ways that we can make clothes and costumes and things like that. And I just would love to learn about all of those things and like have them all in one place. But also, besides that, is to also have a place to celebrate the skill, because that's really important to me as well. You know, think about your favorite fashion designer for a second. Yves Saint Laurent, Christian Dior, I don't know, I can't think of Gucci. You know the big names, right? You know the designer. They might do the big fashion sketch, or they come up with the idea. But do you know any of their pattern makers' names? Do you know anybody of their team that actually takes that sketch or that idea and turns it into the actual thing? That is a pivotal role, to be able to take an idea and turn it into reality. And the designer is not usually the one that does that. It's the pattern maker or the draper, they call them sometimes, or it's a team of people. And I guarantee you that all of these designers have their team of people, right? But you don't even know their names. A lot of people don't even know they exist. A lot of people don't even know what a pattern maker is. And so at PatternCon, like, it's really important to me to celebrate this incredibly powerful skill, and have fun while doing it, and just bring awareness about it, and celebrate it and have fun with it and learn from each other and just kind of like nerd out about it, really. But that's my dream, that's my goal, and that's where my idea started. But I kind of want to hear from you, what you would want to see at PatternCon. If we we're going to have one. It's not if, it's when. When we create PatternCon, what kinds of things would you want to see? What kind of classes would you want to take? Would you be interested in? What kinds of, like, I would love to see some kinds of like displays of, there's a dress that I always see that pops up in my feed on Instagram all the time with the hexagon like underdress, and you like lift it up and it's this, like I would love to see cool, crazy patterns like that, like on display, and we'd get to kind of study them, things like that, listening from speakers. We can do fitting focused classes, and even like do a VIP level of, I know I had a retreat that sold out very quickly recently. Jules knows, she grabbed a spot. I'm going to listen to you guys because I've been chatting. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Hold on. Axe Smith says, I've gotten all these antique linens and lace that I wanted to incorporate into the clothes that I make. Ooh, that sounds like a fun challenge. I bet they're gorgeous too. Immediately my brain goes to like adding flare in pants, or making like little tops, like if you put them together, as a peplum or something. Making collars, adding collars to things, or cuffs. That would be really fun. Oh, so many fun different designs. Hi, Miami fashion stylist. Thank you for chatting. I'm so glad we figured out the chat. I was like, we aren't having this live if I can't hear from you guys. That's the whole point. Jules says, glad you made it. Hi, Victoria. Hopefully fitting will be easier for pants. I just finished bootstrap pants form. Neighbor helped me make a stand. Oh, great. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I've heard about the bootstraps form. So would that be something that people would be interested in, making your own dress form? Definitely I think that we would need to do a vendor haul, like maybe we get Bootstrap to come and show us their stuff, and you would have like pattern books that you can purchase, of course, fabric and maybe sewing patterns that you would want. Hi, Sue. Hello. Hand knit by Grandma Axe Smith. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. That is such a treasure. I really keep us posted with what you do about those. Like, so many fun things that you can do with those kinds of things. I don't know if you saw for Atlanta Frocktails, I found it was like a, Afghan is not the right word. It was like a lace bed runner. It was all white lace bed runner, and I made a dress out of it because I just thought it was so pretty, and it had all these flowers. I got it in an antique store. I had to be very careful because it was, very open weave. That might be helpful if some of these things are open weave. It sounded like they were more linens though, because there were some tips that I shared in that, how you sew with air. But that was really fun. I loved how that turned out. So you can really do a lot of fun things. Jules said, start and finish display on the process of a project you absolutely thought was a challenge. Ooh, that's interesting, Jules. I like that. Yeah, how could we do that? So like a challenging project, like a challenging pattern project, and showing the process of it, and how to go about it. Okay, I like that idea. That sounds really fun. Sue says, cutting out your dress. Oh, yay. Looking forward to the retreat. Yeah, we'll talk more about the retreat in a second, because honestly, the retreat was kind of me testing the waters and seeing if people were interested in, and you guys, we sold out in 1 minute. So I got the message. You're interested. And so I'm just, before I move on to the next step after the retreat, I want to hear from you guys. That's why we're kind of doing this. Yeah, trying to get fabric since the local shops aren't having great apparel fabric. That's true, Sue. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm going through that right now, actually, with our costume business. We're making one costume. So it's always it's weird, but it's always kind of trickier when you're only making one of something. Especially if it's not that it's ready to wear because it is a costume, but it's so hard to find that right perfect fabric. And it has become more challenging to get good fabrics, especially in this country. A lot of suppliers and factories. I mean, where I live right now in North Carolina, it used to be a huge textile hub and industry, but it all moved overseas years ago, and it's not here a lot. There's still some factories, there's some denim factories, um, but it's still really hard to get fabrics, apparel fabrics especially. Quilting fabrics all day long. Upholstery fabrics, yep. But trying to find good apparel fabrics is really a struggle, and I think that is everywhere in the US. New York and LA even have it a little bit easier, but even still, I was just talking with a friend of mine yesterday while we were looking for these specific fabrics that we're wanting to create this design. And I'm like, you got any good, references for this kind of thing in LA? And he was like, I don't even shop LA anymore. I order my stuff from China a lot of times. So, and fleece. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. Right. Well, you know why fleece is everywhere is because it takes no effort. Like, you don't have to finish fleece off. You can cut a square of it. You can tie knots in it and it's like done. That's why fleece is so popular. But yeah, you're right. Well, how about PatternCon Frocktails? Well, yeah, Frocktails have become very popular. In fact, I was actually thinking about throwing a Frocktails, and I talked to a couple of local people, pattern teachers who are here, and we thought about doing it, but we now have two. We have a Charlotte Frocktails and we have a Raleigh Frocktails. And I'm going to the Charlotte Frocktails for sure because I want to connect with people in North Carolina who make clothes and do stuff and with this community and support them, of course. I would love to go to the Raleigh one as well. It was announced after the Charlotte Frocktails, and it happens to land in one of my busiest months of my business. And my father is visiting at that same time, and it's the week before or 2 weeks before the Charlotte Frocktails. So I'm not going to be able to go. I'm really bummed, but I'm glad that they're doing it. So I still am supportive of it. And actually, my friend that we were talking about doing the Frocktails, Brooks and Camper, she's the one I heard about Charlotte Frocktails from, and then she couldn't go because it was the wrong date for her. So she's actually going to go to the Raleigh Frocktails. So it seems like they're already doing, not that it has to be in North Carolina, because most of my people are not in North Carolina. They're all over the place. But PatternCon, I see it more like a convention. I see it more like a collection of classes and displays and features on things related to pattern making and sewing, of course, and a celebration. Like maybe we give some awards out. I would like to feature some people, and that's what I'm envisioning. And the retreat, when we talk about the retreat, and that was why I started with that, to see if people were interested. So we called it Fitabulous Fit Weekend Retreat because that's kind of similar to the Fitabulous Fit Boot Camp that will be coming up again very soon, which is my virtual free 5-day fitting boot camp. If you have not heard of it, please stay tuned. We will be talking more about that in the next couple of weeks. It is coming up in September. It's always a big party, a big blast, virtually. And we focus all about fitting and learning kind of my way of how I learned how to do fitting, and it really simplifies it. So if fitting is something that you struggle with and you haven't checked out the boot camp, or even if you have and you want to come and hang out with us again, that's going to be coming back very soon. So, and then Sue and Jules are actually members of my private community, the Pattern Place, which is a private community where we have live events, 2 live events a month. and where I answer questions on any project that you're working on, whether it's fitting or sewing or making a pattern. In fact, we have a live Q&A session tonight, so I will see you ladies later after this. And then we have an extra masterclass on, something that you would want to learn that could help you in your journey. So last month we did discovering and dressing for your body type. And in September, we have a textiles class learning about different fabrics held by Katrina Walker. And this month, our masterclass is dedicated to fitting. So once a quarter, we dedicate a whole class where we just talk about fitting and fitting adjustments and learn about fitting. And there's a lot of focus on fitting, and we learn pattern making principles as well. And that's what we do. And plus the whole resource library. There's about 200 videos in a resource library that's searchable, that you can find answers to any fitting or pattern question that might come up when you're working on these projects. So what we focus on a lot in the private community, the Pattern Place, is fitting, but also learning about what a sloper is, that you don't have to draft a sloper or a block, that you actually receive my full set of slopers and blocks. When you sign up to the community. Sue says, yes, it's the best community. And if you are interested, I just will put this out there in joining us in this community. We have a pre-sale coming up. It's a 48-hour flash sale coming up actually in 2 weeks. So the wait list is the place to be. The sale will only be available to people on my wait list. So I will put that link in the description when I'm done. But now is the time to get in if this sounds like something you want to join. And Linda's here as well. But what we focus on is learning about what the sloper is. I teach things a little differently with pattern making, because I find that a lot of people, when you're first learning, struggle with the drafting part. So, and give up before they learn how awesome it is, and how that I pattern almost every single day, and I rarely draft from scratch. So I'm like, don't give up on that part, because it's still so much more benefit that you can use in your everyday life that will help you on your sewing journey. So they get the slopers. They learn what a sloper is. They learn why it's important to have one, or helpful to have one rather. And then we start learning pattern making techniques on how you can change that sloper into creating different designs. But those techniques also work on purchased patterns, any pattern. That's the great thing. And you don't have to draft. So, and then we focus a lot on fitting, because fitting is pattern making, if you really think about it. And it's making pattern adjustments to make the garment fit you. So the more you understand about the almighty dart, if you're new here, I talk a lot about darts, and it really all boils down to just that. But you learn about that, and then that helps you understand what you're looking for, and it helps you understand how to make adjustments to your patterns. And we dive deep into this, into the boot camp. But I work with a lot of students, helping them to fit the sloper to their body, because once you have a sloper that fits you well, making new designs off of that sloper, you're going to have very little fitting adjustments that need to be made. So that's what we do virtually in the private pattern making community that we have called the Pattern Place. It's only open a couple times a year. I just want to say that. And that time is coming up very soon. So if you're interested in that, check out the wait list. But I'm circling back now. That's what we do virtually in my membership, but it's hard. I have done a lot of learning on how to do a fitting virtually. I've done a lot of learning on how to do a fitting in person, which is hard enough. But then trying to do it virtually is a whole new skill that I have been working on for the last 4 years. And it's hard to fit yourself. I'm gonna be honest. I know that, and I share tips and things with people here, on my social medias, but also to my students, and help give them advice on how to make fitting corrections and fitting adjustments on yourself. So I thought, well, if we were going to do an in-person event, why not offer fitting the sloper, the mat? Like, the sloper is, once you have a sloper that fits you well, and a sloper can be anything. Typically, when somebody says a sloper, you're talking about a bodice, a skirt, maybe pants, maybe a sleeve. But you can have a sloper. I have slopers for unitards for my circus performers. I have slopers for jackets. You know, it can be any pattern that is a basic pattern that fits well to the person you're wanting to make patterns from. Once you have that, then making different style adjustments, different designs becomes so much more easy and fun. So it's very super important to get that sloper to fit right, but that's kind of a hard part, right? And that's what I help people with in my community. But I thought, let's hold a retreat. Let's get everyone together. And me and my friend, who I actually learned fitting from originally, will fit the sloper for you. Of course, we'll walk you along through it. We'll help you make those corrections. And this is what we do virtually in the Pattern Place. But if we can do it in person, knock it out in one weekend, because it's hard to find that time, right? So that's what the Fitabulous Fit weekend was, the retreat that is happening in February. Now, because it's me and my friend doing all of the fittings, we can only fit so many people and make sure that by the end of the weekend, you're going to have a sloper that actually fits and is adjusted and all of that. So we had to limit how many people we could have. So we had only room for 20 people. And that's why we sold out. We sold out, which I had a feeling was going to happen because I knew this is something that people really like, but I was very surprised that we sold out in 1 minute. So that's what the retreat was. But it was also like kind of testing the waters of people would come and hang out with me in person. If you wanted to learn about fitting, if that would be beneficial to you. And I see now that that was popular. So of course I would want to work something like that, like getting a sloper that's fit to you into PatternCon. But I want it to be more than just that, right? I want it to be more than just you have a sloper at the end of the day. Maybe you already have a sloper. Maybe there's more that you want to learn about, you know? But would that be something that you guys would be interested in if it was like maybe, because we still would have to limit, you know, if I'm only one person. I love y'all, but I'm only one person, and you know, and I have some friends who could help me, but you know, what there's going to have to be a limit. And I think a convention we could it could be a big party. Like I just think it would be just a big party to get together, to learn about drafting, to learn about different design things that we can do, and just hang out and learn about pattern making. Like, what do you guys think about that? Victoria says, my bootstrap pants form was a bit big in the leg. I couldn't figure out how to fix it. Then I remembered your video on darts. And it worked. Victoria, that's so awesome. It's all about the dart, y'all. It's all about the darts. See, Sue knows darts are magic. They are. And really, I mean, I don't know if you're new around here and you don't understand my enthusiasm for darts. If you're not new around here, as the ladies in the chat will tell you, you know that I have this obsession with darts. And why do I obsess about that? I don't obsess. I think that's a strong word. I'm passionate, right? Because it's a dart. It seems so simple, and really it is. But the more that you understand what that simple thing can do and how it works, and it's magical. It is magical. And you just have to understand that one thing, and then everything else will kind of click, click, click. It makes sense. I mean, to me, it does. And that's what I share with my students, because when you think about pattern making, when you think about sewing, when you think about fitting, it can be so overwhelming. It can be like, oh my God, there's all these things to learn. And there are, but really, even like the crazy stuff, Dart Fanatic. Yes, Jules, thank you. When you think about even the crazy, outrageous, avant-garde designs that you see, it really comes down to 3 principles, and that's the way I teach pattern making. Moving a dart is the first principle that you learn. Honestly, they all are about moving the dart. Moving a dart, adding fullness, and contouring. So those 3 things, every single pattern can be boiled down to those 3 things. So yes, it can be outrageous, it can be big, it can be all these crazy things, it can be intricate and all of that. But when you break it down, ultimately, where did you add the dart? Where did you move the dart? Where did you take a dart away? It can always come down to just that. And so that makes it less daunting for me anyways. Like, that's how I feel. It's like, oh, I only have to learn one thing really well, and then everything else will kind of make more sense. It'll fall in line. And really, that's kind of how it is. I mean, with fitting, it is different though. Fitting is, and I've been talking with some friends of mine who've been sewing and fitting, and they actually are educators and teachers as well. And we kind of came up through the same path. I was actually speaking with a really good friend of mine. He's been one of my best friends for, I don't know, 22 years. We met each other at Utah Shakespearean Festival back in the day. And, we were talking about fitting, and it's like, where did you learn fitting? I asked him. And he said, I learned it by sitting in the fitting room. When my teacher, he went to UNC Chapel Hill for their graduate program. And the woman that, she's retired now, but Judy Adamson used to run that program. She used to work for Barbara Matera, making costumes for Broadway. And she started that program. And now Tristan, I believe, is the girl in charge over there. But he took her graduate program, and he just sat and he got to be the assistant on every show that they did. So he was involved in all the fittings. And that's how he learned fitting. And that's kind of similar to how I learned fitting as well. I learned how to fit by being in fittings and watching people do fittings on lots of different people and just observing. And over time, you learn what to look for and how to fix it. Now, not everybody has 20 years. I get it. You don't have 20 years to sit there and make sure your sloper fits so that you can start making patterns. So how do we teach that? And that's been the challenge that I have accepted. But ultimately, even though we can distill kind of the ideas down to a simpler form, it takes your brain time and your eyes time to learn what you're looking for and to learn how to move things around to get the end result that you want to achieve. So that's what we do in the Pattern Place, and that's what we'll do in the live retreat as well, is hopefully, and people have the option whether they want to keep their fitting private or not, but I encourage my students in our community. We have that fitting masterclass once a quarter. It's a safe space. We create a safe space. I hold no tolerance to anybody talking negatively about anyone else, but especially themselves. And we are all coming from a place of learning. It's a really vulnerable thing to look at, and I think that's why, another reason why it's so hard to learn it, because it's hard to look at your body under a microscope. But ultimately, your body is perfect. It's making those clothes and that pattern fit you that needs to happen. And so if we come at it from that way, that we're all learning, we aren't criticizing any person. We are the boss of our patterns, and we are the boss of our fitting, and we are going to make it do what we want it to do because we can, because we're the boss. And we're all coming at it from that point of view. Then you can see it's great, because that kind of gives you that fitting room perspective that I learned my fitting experience through, that my friend Randy learned his experience through. You guys are getting to be in the room with a lot of different examples of what is going on and what to do and what to see and what to look for, so that you're learning. It's like a boot camp, like you're getting to see lots of different examples. If usually people, especially home sewers, you learn how to fit on yourself, and you get really good at the adjustments that you need for yourself. But then if you want to do it for a business, if you want to do it for clients, it's going to look different on everybody. Everybody is uniquely built beautifully in their own way. So it's good to learn and to see how different things show up on different bodies, and really, learn what to do. And the only way to do it, it's not the only way, but the best way to do it, is to expose yourself to that, to see all those different examples. And the more you see it, the more it's going to start to make sense. And then remembering that it's all about that dart. Am I adding a dart or taking a dart away? And that's just all you're thinking about. it just starts to click for a lot of people. So that's what we're going to do in the retreat as well. We'll get to do it in person, whereas I won't have to try to explain to somebody what I would do in 5 minutes. I could just be like, see how this happened here, you know. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I think that that will be a great thing about PatternCon as well, is that we will be in person, hanging out with each other, getting to see exactly what to do, right? Hi, RT Blade from Nashville. You aren't too far from me in Tennessee. I love Nashville. It was fun when we went through there. Linda says, told my daughter's friend her body is perfect. She and her dress just weren't friends yet. Darts made them friends. Ah! That's so wonderful, Linda. That's right. That's right. Her and her body are perfect. And we just need to whip that dress into shape so that you guys can be friends. I prefer princess seams, but Axe Smith, princess seams are darts. Seams are darts. I have a whole YouTube Tricky Thursday video about it. Actually, that just came out a couple weeks ago. But yes, I love princess seams. You're right. It's a beautiful line and it gives great shaping. Basically, you know, I say it's all about the dart. It all comes down to darts. Is the dart is what makes a flat, you know, the reason that we have darts, the reason that we have seams is because if you just put something flat, it's not going to hug the curves. The dart is what hugs the curves. It's that the triangle of what you take out, the pizza, whatever you want to call it, the dart that you take out that will cup the flat fabric to hug the body where it needs to hug. And whether that comes in a seam, a tuck, I think it's 5 alternatives to darts is what the name of that video is. But seams, tucks, gathers, all of those are versions of darts. And that's why I'm saying when I'm doing a fitting, do I need to add a dart or take a dart away is usually the question that I'm asking when I'm doing a fitting, because it's always that. It's like, do I need more space or do I have too much fabric here and we need to take it away? And the dart is the answer. Anyway, as you can probably tell, I can talk about darts forever, but and we kind of got off on a tangent because me and my darts, I love them so much. But anyway, so that's where the retreat idea kind of came about. Was it's something that we do virtually in the Pattern Place and that people benefit from, but I thought that it's also hard. I know I hear from a lot of people, a lot of my students, that it's hard to find the time. It's hard to make the time. We're all busy. Believe me, I get it. I run 2 to 3 businesses on the regular, and you know, and I have a life outside of that as well. And imagine if you have kids and grandkids and you know, other things that happen. So that was another kind of benefit to having the retreat, is that you dedicate that time. You come for the weekend and you're going to knock it out and you're going to get it done. And it's not something that you have to fit into your regular everyday life. It's like going on vacation, right? But then you come back with this super awesome golden tool that you get to use. And so the the pattern convention would be something similar like that. So that's what I'm thinking. What kind of vendors should we have? What kinds of pattern making would you be interested in? Axe, I'm curious. You love princess seams. Are you a fan of vintage style, vintage patterns? Would you guys be interested in doing some of those like tailoring drafts or drafting from scratch? Or would you be more interested in, you know, learning about digital pattern making, like for like some of those big, you know, like, are you interested in going into the fashion industry and learning like Gerber and Lectra? I don't know a lot about those things because that doesn't really serve me in the costuming world, because we're doing a lot of custom stuff. I love it. I love learning about the digital stuff. And it's so handy. Like when I got to play with a program for a while and you got to, you know, it just automatic, like add 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's like a click of a button, do, click, and it's seam allowance added all around the pattern. It's like, oh, that's super handy, super nice. Like equally space these buttons, you know, things like that. But it just wasn't practical for me to use in my everyday business, but is that something you guys would be interested in? Let me see. Jules says, superpower from a superhero. Oh, Jules, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. It is a superpower. That's what I call pattern making. I think sewing already is a life skill. I think everyone should at least know how to sew a little bit, because we all need it. You go to the store, nothing fits. It doesn't fit anybody. Like, there's a very slight, small percentage of people who can go into the store and find stuff that fits them perfectly. So the majority of us need some kind of alterations, and if you can do it yourself, you don't have to pay somebody else to do it, or wear ill-fitting clothing. But so knowing how to sew is powerful for sure. Replacing buttons, making things that you need around the house, but pattern making takes it to a different level. Pattern making gives you the superpower. There's no restrictions anymore. You can make literally anything. And like I said, it doesn't only pertain to clothing and costumes. I mean, pattern make. I used to talk about this. My cousin he worked for Callaway Golf Clubs or something, and he said that there were like prototype people who would like figure out how to make the shape of the golf club. It's same thing. It's like somebody told me once, it's like sheet metal. In metal fabrication, it's like taking a sheet of metal. What are the pieces that I would need to cut to skin this 3D object? Metal's flat. So it's that same concept. It's just we use it for clothing. And then we have that fun different element where depending on the fabric that we're using can give us a different effect. I think it's fun and challenging. It can be frustrating. Don't get me wrong. Sue says vintage fabric vendors. So yes, we definitely want fabric vendors. That is for sure noted. And all things patterns. Yeah, Sue, pattern nerd girl of my heart. And Jules, of course, is a vintage lover with her vintage. What is it? Vintage Vixens? Is that the name of your group? Yes, and some of these old patterns that are hard to follow and learn on. That's a great point, Jules. Jules is a lover, I know she is, of vintage patterns and style. And so she's gotten a couple of these vintage patterns, and they're hard to, these vintage patterns, which I don't know what years these are, but I love them. They're a little bit limited because vintage patterns used to only come in one size, whereas nowadays they come in, you get 5 sizes in one pattern, which is great. But the only downside of that is with these patterns, see how the seam allowance is like drawn on for you, and everything was kind of labeled more accurately whenever this was. And I think it's like the 50s maybe, but you go earlier than that, like 40s, 30s, 20s, and there's almost no markings on those patterns. It's like there's no text, there's no print, there's random holes. You're like, is this a punch hole? Is this a notch? And you have to kind of figure out, and that's what Jules tried to, it was a 1930s dress, I think you were working on, and it was like, what are these holes? And it was that tissue paper too, which is only so durable. So yeah, taking those and being able to understand them a little bit better. A nerdlet, not quite a full-fledged nerd. I think, just Sue, I'm going to call you a pattern nerd because of your interest alone. I think you qualify. We'll let you in the club. You're already in the club. But yeah, vintage would be, what else I thought would be great, is I thought that I was talking with my friend Mela. So my friend Mela is going to be the one helping me at the Fitabulous Fit Weekend retreat that we're doing. She's going to be the one helping me do the fittings. And she's actually my professor, my first teacher who taught me pattern making. She didn't, I took another pattern making class, but she was my costume professor. And she's the one who basically was like, this pattern thing, you really dig it and you should follow that. And I'm like, okay, and we still keep in touch today. But she loves historical costumes. So that was always her love, and that's how I was introduced to costuming and pattern making. And we did like vintage doublet draft, not vintage, but historical doublet drafts. And like I made a Regency gown and a corset when I was in school. And so that is her love and what she wants to do. But and she always says it. She said women of a certain age is how she describes herself and her group. But she says, you know, she loves that vintage style. Sorry, I keep saying vintage, historical style, like Edwardian collars, corsets, different details like that. And she said, wouldn't it be great to take some of those details and turn it into a modern, like have a modern twist on it? So you're taking some of those techniques and incorporating them into modern clothing for, you know, like older women who want to have a little bit of a unique flair that's still modern, but a nod to, you know, like, so that's her thing. And I'm like, yes, that sounds amazing and really fascinating. So, um, I told her that she needs to talk more about that. And maybe I'll even have her on here and we can talk about some things that she's kind of played around with, like experimented. Just that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, ooh, that sounds really cool. Like, what would that look like? How would we make it? You know, where would we start? What would, and kind of going back to what Jules was saying, like taking a challenging process and how do you break it down and where do you start with that? And Marcy, hi, Marcy. I see Marcy's here, another vintage lover as well. When shopping and trying on clothes, I used to tell my teen daughter if something didn't fit, that there was nothing wrong with her. It was just the pattern was not made to fit her body. Absolutely. Absolutely. And my girls know this because it's something that I talk about all the time, but it's hard to remember that all the time. And especially if you don't know that, you think there's something wrong with you and there's just not. It's just patterns and the way that they're made, they can't make them to fit everybody. It would be impossible. We are all so different wonderfully that way. But in order to make things that fit, um, the best way is to actually know how to alter them to fit you. And or you find the company that has a sloper, that has a base pattern that they are using that fits with your body, and then you stick with that company, because that the cut of what they are using works for you, which is harder, you know, sometimes. So Jules says, what is the name of the place you recommended me to use to print out my slopers? They would be a great vendor. Oh yeah, PDF plotting, pdfplotting.com. So for those of you who love PDF patterns, which is another great thing that technology has brought to us, that we can instantly send patterns to others all over the world, but then you have to print them at home and tape them together, and that's not everybody's cup of tea, and it's hard to get it to be accurate sometimes. So pdfplotting.com is a resource that you can use. You can send those digital files and they will print it out onto one sheet of paper for you, like the patterns that you buy at the store, so you don't have to tape them together. It's a really wonderful thing. They go pretty quickly and they're pretty inexpensive, for what you get. You can also do it, I think, at like Kinko's, you know, coffee shop. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, I think. I haven't done it a ton, but pdfplotting.com is who I use. Yeah, that's a great idea for a vendor too, Jules. Thanks. Victoria says, I'm 70 and just want everyday clothes that fit decently. I can go shopping and maybe after 6 hours find one decent top, legs of pants I could sell for sailboat sales. Yeah, I hear you, Victoria. And that's another thing too, especially a lot of my students and people that I help are, you know, in the later years, and our bodies change. I mean, our bodies change and fluctuate all the time, daily, hourly, sometimes, depending on the month or the time of the month. But especially as we get older, you know, things don't sit in the same place that they used to. And they don't, really think, you know, in addition to the plus size community that is really underserved, I think that just the older generation, the so over 50 is a huge group on Instagram that you know, they're wanting representation in their patterns, because not all ladies who are over 50 want to dress a certain way. Like, they want style and flair and all of that too, you know, but they don't have the patterns out there that are easy to get, that are going to fit their bodies. So it becomes more of a struggle. And Victoria, like, to your point, they don't have them in the stores either. So you're just left in the lurch. Sew them together. Sew them together, trying this weekend. Oh, Linda, sewing the PDF patterns together. Yeah, I saw that on Instagram. I don't know, that seems like a lot of effort for me. I like the glue stick. It's probably been my best so far. Okay. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me. And those of you watching the replay, thanks for coming, hanging out. Please leave your comments down below if you're watching the replay. Join in this conversation. I do want to make this more of a regular thing as I am kind of putting things together to create PatternCon because it's happening, y'all. It's happening. Where it's happening, when it's happening is still to be decided. What all is included, what are we going to do, that will all be figured out, but I would love your help. Like, I want to hear your feedback. I want this to be something that you would be excited about going to, and then we can all hang out and nerd out together on patterns and fitting and look fabulous, you know, like a Comic-Con convention where people like wear their costumes. We could wear our me mades and be proud of them and show them off to each other like a Frocktails, but just a little bit more than just an evening dancing and hanging out, like a whole weekend, I think would be fun. Thank you, Monica. You have a great day as well. But yeah, I'm going to run because I got to get ready for our Q&A session with the Pattern Place later on today. I will put that link to the waitlist if you're interested in checking that out. No commitment. If you jump on the waitlist, there are some extra bonuses and prizes that you'll be eligible for if you're interested in joining our community. And at the very least, do pay attention and look out for our Fitabulous Fit Boot Camp, which will be coming up again soon. We always have a blast, and you'll learn lots more about the dart and how easy fitting can be when you kind of take it from the way I like to see things. Anyway, that's all we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining. I really appreciate seeing you, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.